It is so nice for you to join us this morning, and we really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And I am fascinated by e-commerce. We, as marketers, we're always interested in what is new and what is on the bleeding edge of digital marketing. So it really is an honor to have you with us today. And so thank you for being here.
The honor is all mine, Mark. Thank you so much for having me on this show. I've been sort of listening to some of your previous podcasts, and all of them are exceptional. Even if I
Thank
get
you.
10% of that level, I'll consider myself very successful.
Well, I'm sure that we're going to get into some really good stuff today. So I would love it if you could kind of, as the founder and CEO, you have the longest tenure with the company. So tell us about how you guys decided this is a thing that the world needs. It must have this. It must have NetElixir. So tell us the origin story.
Absolutely, Mark. So this goes back to probably about 2002, 2003, Mark. At that point in time, with two of my engineering schoolmates, we were still in India at that time, in a city called Hyderabad. We decided to start an online gaming company. So they had already started this. I had joined them later as someone who started their bingo business. It was a fascinating time. This was like the wild west of online 2002, 2003.
Right.
And you could do whatever you essentially wanted to do. So we started a bingo business, and they already had poker and casino running. And all of this from the city of Hyderabad in India. We had our offices in Dominican Republic. And that was the time there was this small company called Google, which essentially was slowly emerging into sort of a massive focus. Yahoo used to be a dominant player then.
Right.
And Yahoo had come up with an interesting model. Probably not even Yahoo. A company called Overture had started an interesting marketing model, which was called the pay-per-click advertising. So anytime clicks on any ad, it was done by a gentleman called Bill Close way back, I think 1999 or something. So it was an I'm sorry, Bill Gross, not Bill Close. It was an interesting one because we used to spend a lot of money at this company, Party Gaming, that I was sort of working for. And it really seemed to convert extremely well. So these people sort of clicked on it. They came to the website. They signed up as a real money player or a play money player. So in our gaming world. And it was interesting because we could actually go ahead and really capture the return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
And the fascinating part. So I have a bit of a maths and tech background. And one of my big struggles is everything has to be measurable, and this really came to that particular mold very well. This was entirely measurable. This was controllable to an extent, and we used to invest a lot at Party Gaming. In fact, Party Gaming went on to mark becoming the world's largest online gaming company in 2005. It was actually at that time bigger than Google and British Airways combined. But anyway, I sort of moved on from Party Gaming in 2003 December. To start a company which could bring in a bit of a mathematical modeling as well as a lot of technology to make this what was called the PPC advertising, then pay-per-click advertising or paid search advertising, predictable and controllable for advertisers. So that was the inspiration starting off then. Also, I mean, I come from a pretty middle-class Indian family, and we were there in India. So all of my father's side, they are professors or teachers, and their son working in an online gaming company was not really a matter of great pride. So this really allowed me to step out into a more ethical world of Google and search advertising and mathematics and so on, which I absolutely cherish.
That's wonderful.
That's how we started off. Yeah.
Yeah. You said the more ethical world of actual, digital marketing and advertising. For people who don't understand the back end and the algorithms and the ways that there is a true science to it, and those who can see it and appreciate it bring a tremendous amount of value to the marketplace, because part of the difficulty of dealing, I'm sure, with clients is that you have amassed a massive body of knowledge and information, and there's probably a consistent struggle to go, I understand your questions, but let me help this make sense to you, right? So you're having to communicate with clients and do some education piece. I would imagine we face that from time to time, helping to educate to say, no, here is the methodology and it works these ways, and let me help you interpret that. Do you feel like that's a thing that you guys are doing all the time?
Spot on, Mark.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that we have learned, and I think in all humility, I think even though we may have the knowledge, uh, it's I think it has been extremely important for us to understand that every client's business is unique.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, we work for a fairly wide range of mid-sized companies, SMBs, and some large companies as well. But majority of our folks would be anywhere between $20 million to maybe $70 million. Right? That's our area that we focus on. And it's a very humbling moment to see the amount of passion these businesses have for their business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the moniker, so as to say, that we have essentially used is, remember, Mark, those old family physicians who sat beside your bedside when you were not feeling well, and who held your hand, sort of felt the pulse,
Mm-hmm.
and very patient in terms of asking you questions and listening very carefully. They didn't really sort of try to jump in. They didn't try to preach. They just sort of listened very patiently. And just because of that empathy that they showed, you felt very comfortable. I mean, your illness probably was half cured right there. And then when they spoke, it really had substance.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the same feeling which we felt because at Party Gaming, I was doing the marketing for about 2 years. I somehow felt that the agency's world had become a little too transactional. I mean, we were a gaming company, and the other agency that we were working with, they were trying to impose what they had learned for e-commerce or retail onto the world of online gaming. I mean, I really wish they had done a little better in terms of understanding and asking the questions.
Mm.
So when we came in, that's the philosophy based on which NetElixir was built. Having said that, I think the speed and the dynamism uh, that really is almost like the constant factor in our industry or category. I am pretty sure both you and Tim are very aware of that. That really requires a growth mindset from our side as well as the client side as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because what really was applicable yesterday uh, probably is not applicable today and may not be applicable tomorrow. So how to really simplify this part while at the same time listening carefully to the client and matching both of these pieces. That I must say, as you rightly mentioned, sometimes can be a pretty big task.
Yes.
So it's an interesting space that we live in. The space is changing at a very fast pace. I mean, for example, back then Google Ads, if you look at it, and today's Google Ads, there is no similarity.
Right.
So I think having that humility to understand that the client's business is unique and important, and at the same time being aware as well as rather than trying to be a thought leader, just trying to be an extension of the customer's team in translating those difficult concepts into something which is a little more human, where the customer really feels that they need this rather than we are trying to impose on this.
Right.
I think it's a very helpful thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Are y'all are you primarily still pay-per-click, and Google Ads is your platform that you play on?
Yeah, I think Tim, I mean, roughly about 50% of our business now is the paid search part. So it's basically Google and a small chunk of Microsoft or Bing as well. But the balance 50%, I think we have tried to quite successfully so far, try to sort of reposition ourselves more as an e-commerce growth partner. So specifically working with retail, direct to consumer, and B2B e-commerce companies, and helping them grow their business online. That's essentially what our mission is.
Yeah, fascinating.
50% is pay-per-click, though. Yeah, 50% is paid search, though. Yeah,
and you have been doing this since 2005. I mean, you have a long tenure in this. How is are you building this business thinking through the next 20 years, we're going to keep going? Or are you thinking, I want to build this business and it needs to convert into something else? How are you thinking about it?
I think that's a great question, Tim. I mean, honestly speaking, before the COVID struck us, I must say that it was just so focused in terms of build. We never really got any time to take a pause and really reflect. But having said that, I think if I were to really look into the next 10 years, I think that'd be a very good time frame, 10 to 12 years. What do I see in the digital world? I see obviously the digital world maybe 10 years later, let us say 20, 30, 31, may look completely different, right? So far, we have been so used to a certain way in which the consumers interact. And there is a certain amount of predictability in the consumer behavior as well, or at least the pre-COVID times, there used to be more predictability as well. So that's something which is going to evolve quite dramatically, right? So, and a big driver are the digital natives. For example, the Gen Z, for example, really interact and engage completely differently compared to probably us, or probably completely different for the baby boomers. So it's very interesting as to how the different segments really pan out and where it really sort of settle. But having said that, by 2030, about 40% probably, roughly of the maybe 30 to 40% of the buying cloud would be with these digital natives, right? These are very comfortable. Right. And their behavior is difficult at this point in time to even really predict. So that's, I think, the first part. The second part, and I'm sort of giving you a very long-winded answer to a very
no, it's great. Yeah.
The second thing is this entire thing of metaverse, and I know metaverse in certain circles can be a matter of ridicule. In other circles, it is something which is really, really sort of something which will sort of lead the way. So, but my question or my thought is, as someone who's there in the industry, what we really try to encourage our team members to do is to really, with an objective and an open mind, really sort of see as to how this evolves and try to really participate in anything, in any evolution, right? It's almost like, let us say, team, you're trying to learn riding a bicycle, right? So initially you will sort of get it right from the word go. But if somehow we are able to really objectively observe as to how this is evolving and participate, even though I think we have a fail faster motto at NetElixir, you may sort of be failing all the time, but at least you sort of figure out as to how this is evolving. So that really has helped us over about 17 years, as you sort of mentioned, 17 or 18 years. And that is something which I think would be critical in terms of companies' evolution as such. So that's, I think, the one part, the consumer behavior evolution, and how does it really, that the different parts of digital really look maybe 10 years hence. The second part, which I think I'm sort of fascinated with, Mark, is this entire concept of more of an inclusive digitalization. So when I say inclusive, I mean, you probably sort of know it very well, that roughly around 50% of the world doesn't have access to internet as we do, right? And they will, I mean, a big chunk of they will sort of get the access in the next 10 years, right? So how would this world look like when suddenly we have almost like different segments come up? Segments like digital natives who are extremely comfortable. That's the life that is basically their primary life. While some folks maybe somewhere, maybe in rural parts of India, somewhere in the northeastern part of India, who doesn't have access to internet, suddenly sort of getting in. So are we really ready to look at the internet world in a way whereby we are able to be inclusive for all these different groups which come in? Because if we don't do that, then we risk a big chance of really having a very fragmented world. And as you know very well, I mean, I think the current crazy war which is sort of going on, I'm sorry to make an allusion to that. I mean, I think it has to be a more unified, a more human place. And for that, I think inclusiveness is the key, and the digital can really do a lot on that direction. So if I were to really put these concepts like consumer behavior, evolving technology, more of an inclusive digitalization part, I think there is a role for your agency or our agency to play in trying to bridge this gap. And that's what we really want to be. So I don't know in terms of paid search, to answer your question, whether paid search will be that big, etc., etc. But if we can really help our clients make those human brand connections in a meaningful way, I think we would consider ourselves blessed and successful. So that's the part. It's basically how do you really make those connections happen in a meaningful manner, essentially for a big mass around the world. Yeah.
So I would imagine, though, that with almost 20 years experience as an established agency, you're better able to see natural tendencies and the way that markets fragment, and to be able to isolate and really focus in on specific key demographics or psychographics. You're able to speak simultaneously to that Gen Z kid who is not just digital native, but like not just native, but like 90% of his life and human interactions are happening there. And at the same time, be able to help in the transactional way with somebody who's like, I'm just happy to be able to click on something and it gets delivered to me, that in a way that I couldn't get any sort of access to goods or online services 2 years ago. So I would imagine people who already think in terms of segments are really poised to be able to sort of address both or multiples.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Mark. So I think one is the segments part, and the second part is how are these segments evolving as well. Like, for example, a very candid confession, which I sort of did to my team. See, if I were to try to essentially, as a Gen Xer, try to really project as to how would a Gen Z think, I know I'll fail all the time. I think so. Effectively, in our company, we have this responsibility sort of lies with the Gen Z folks who are there in the company, right? So I think it's important for us to really, and that really requires a tremendous amount of humility as well, Mark, right? Because you really have to accept, first of all, that you will not be able to figure out the mindset or the overall behavioral patterns of this very unique segment, right? I think that's the accepting that, being humble about that. The second part is identifying and really encouraging the team to really go ahead and do that for you, essentially. So it's a fascinating part. The other piece where, I mean, the folks who are sort of new to the internet. So I'm probably digressing a little bit on this one, Tim, but we also started a non-profit in India. It's more of the rural parts of India, called the Flight Foundation, or in India we call it the Udayan Foundation, Mark. So there is a massive challenge or a problem in the developing nations, where young girls, just because their parents cannot support their education, they get married away after the age of 13. It's just just to give you an understanding, every 7 minutes, one girl who's 13 gets married away, right? Just because. So it's a massive humanitarian sort of going on. It's just absolutely terrible. So we started this foundation, which identifies just a small group of girls, 3 to 5 girls, and we sort of sponsor their education, the high school and 4 years of college. And this time I was in India actually to celebrate, because the first batch, it's just 2 girls. Essentially, they graduated and they already have got about 3 job offers each for companies like Accenture, Virtusa, and Hitachi, and all that. So extremely proud. But I think while we talk about it in terms of just being sort of proud about it, but if I were to really look at their overall engagement patterns versus the engagement patterns of those girls who did not get selected in our program, right? So I'm just doing a bit of a, again, being very analytical, Mark, I just try to analyze. And so the girls did not really get in and so on. So the girls who did not really get into the program, they already have at least 1 kid, Tim. It's just crazy, right? And they would be 20 years of age or 19 years of age. And for them, still owning just a basic phone is the highest level that you can really get to. And these girls who came from the same slums, essentially in these underprivileged neighborhoods in India, they are able to now really compete. And she is joining Accenture. One of the girls is joining Accenture. The second one is joining Hitachi. And she'll be talking about product management and this entire class and so on. So it's almost like a surreal moment. I spent with them exactly a week back. Last Monday, I was with them. And it's just fascinating, right? So if you really take that analogy and really extend to the entire world, now the question is it the question of accessibility? Is it the question of somehow really finding champions who can help these folks? But one thing I hope that you would agree with me, that if the polarization or the fragmentation becomes too huge, it can fundamentally probably create problems that we may not be able to even see today. So that's the the idea of unifying everything and the inclusive digitalization, I think, becomes an important component. But that was, I think, the point I was talking about. So different segments, different evolution patterns, but we really have to sort of get everyone, all these segments in, and then really identify members from that particular demographic segment and so on. The Gen Zs, focus on the Gen Zs, let it tell us about their behavior and so on. So we live in very interesting times. So it's very, very interesting.
So what is wild to me is we're having a conversation with marketers, marketer to marketer. But what we're really talking about and already veering into is global economics, global politics. Right now, and hopefully this won't date the show, but there's the Russian-Ukrainian war that's at play right now, and a majority of it goes into information war. And an interesting thing I saw yesterday is that the U.S. believes that the Ukrainians are winning the information war because our all of our social channels and Reddit and everything is filled up with Ukrainian messaging. But the thing I saw yesterday is that Russia has not even started targeting USA with their information. They are more pushing in India and in Africa because of population and proximity. And so as even global politics advances, companies like yours and like ours, messaging and communications companies, they play a higher and higher importance role. And so your company turning and putting more emphasis on what is the good that we can do, I think is brilliant. It keeps a focus on something positive versus something negative. But also I think it's finding creative ways to utilize your skill sets. Right. So I don't know, in your company, do you think about like how is my company influencing the global economy?
Well, I think that may be a little bit of a far-fetched thing, but I think you sort of bring in a very important point, Tim, that we discuss a lot in the company, right? The entire concept of what is the responsibility of companies like ours, right? I mean, your company, NetElixir, and so on and so forth, right? So I think, so effectively that's, I think, so there is a big responsibility component as well, primarily because the communication, as you rightly mentioned, Tim, I mean, it's bound to become very polarized, right? I mean, Russia, I mean, they are sort of having their own propaganda. Here, there is a different part. There is a third part, which is a different part, and so on. And someone really has to take an objective viewpoint to this thing, an objective viewpoint, and say that let us just talk about as to what are the facts, but most importantly, the context as well. Take a step back and really, in a responsible manner, try to help the clients really go ahead and market themselves. Yeah. And I think is a very important piece from that perspective. So I don't know whether we directly can make any claims in terms of influencing the global economy, etc. Because I think the goals I have seen normally are need to be stretched but achievable for team. But what I really try to challenge the team constantly on is about the responsibility as marketers. And that's something which it's extremely important for us to understand. Because you can only connect the dots looking backwards, right? So essentially, after 5 years, the work that you are doing today may really have an impact, which may not be even visible to you today. But if you really do the right thing, doing the right thing is extremely important. And doing it in a way which has a human face or human touch. I think 5 years later, you would not be ashamed of the work that you did today, or you would actually be extremely proud of the work that you did today. And then you can really claim back that maybe team, in a very, very small way, we really had an impact which was much bigger than just that small paid search campaign or whatever paid social Facebook campaign that you are running. It was much bigger than that. So just really taking a step. So we have this concept of 5 years hence, how would this look? So, and then sort of bring it back to really.
So that's kind of a governing rubric that you guys talk about all the time. Is 5 years. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So 5 years back, I mean, if you really retrace back, I mean, would you really be proud of doing that thing today? Yeah.
So what are you working on today that in 5 years you're going to be most proud of?
Well, I think I don't know. I mean, it's difficult. I wish I could tell you that. There are a couple of areas which I'm uh, very excited about. I mean, one is on the humanitarian side. I'll start with that.
Yeah.
The Udayan Foundation mark that I talked about. Currently we have just about 15 girls who really we are sponsoring. So every year, about 3 girls join in. We'll have probably 5. Our goal is in 5 years, if that number can be raised to maybe over 200. I think it's possible.
Wonderful.
Because that's, I think, one part. And in 10 years, we want to go to that number to about 1,000. So that's, I think, one piece. And we are now finally taking some measure that this, again, not to really demean or any sort of anything, but I think now that one full cycle is complete and the so-called from a startup perspective, that the MVP is now really proven that this model works. The goal is how can we really scale it in a full manner with the right people. That's, I think, one. The second part that we are very fascinated with is this intersection of AI and metaverse, right? So the AR, VR, and the primarily the virtual reality and the AI world. Now we have invested substantially over the last about 5 years building our own first-party customer intelligence platform, Mark, and that's something which we are going to be sort of launching on an alpha mode in about 3 months from now. What it does, it really helps us get a deeper understanding of those consumer behavioral nuances, which you may not be able to get through a standard analytics platform. And really, it provides that stimulus to marketers to market in a more responsible manner. So I think that customer intelligence platform called Elixir Insights, I think, is a big one. And associated to that, we have set up about 7 different groups who are working on one problem or solving one problem or tackling one problem, essentially in the virtual reality or the metaverse world, right? So we recently had an annual innovation contest in the India office, and I think there were about multiple teams. We selected about 7 teams. Each one of them is sort of working on a different project. This is small groups, about 4 people per group, and 7 groups working on different things. And their only mandate, Tim, is to go ahead and try something new and fail. That fail faster is, I think, extremely important because the learning that we are able to get, but by freeing up people and getting their creativity at full blast can be precious. So those are the 2 areas I'm really the AI and the metaverse part, and the humanitarian, more of the Udayan Foundation and the Flight Foundation.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We're going to get all the credentials that we can get from you for Flight Foundation and for your business, and we're going to put those in the outro.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, but thank you for being on. This has been fascinating and enlightening.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Tim. This is absolutely a privilege.
Great. Right. We'll be in touch.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks a lot. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.